Hello, well, applying leather dye in awkward places, what am I on about, you might well ask. Take, for example, you've made a belt, you've got the holes for the belt, and you want to apply dye down the holes, so it's, only stained on one side, and you want to make those holes fill with dye. I know that's attention to detail, but I like to have some attention to detail. There could be other situations where perhaps you're trying to dye inside a curve, or you're trying to dye in a corner of a box or something like that. You come along areas where you want to be able to dye some leather, but there's just not reasonable access. Well, sometimes I use something like a Q-tip type, one of these things. And I've even gone to the extreme, I was just looking for scissors, where I've cut the whole thing in half to try and make it smaller. And to an extent it works. If you're trying to get down somewhere, you can just about get in there. But it's a bit hit and miss, not ideal. I know some people use things like scratch-alls, dip it in the dye, wiggle it around, and it sort of works. I've actually found a far better way, and I thought I'd share it with you. And that's actually to use one of these edge coat applicator pencils. Now, these are really for applying, I personally don't use the stuff, but I hate it. But you get like a jelly edge type coat material which you can dip this pen into, and then you just roll it along and it will coat your edge with the most hideous plastic substance on the planet. No, I joke. I mean, they can look okay, but I prefer nicely burnished, polished edges. Fine, put a seal along the edge, but I don't personally like the sort of thicker, sort of jellied edges. A lot of factories where you get nice veg tan leather bags by quite high-end manufacturers, they'll then go along with their edging machine, which is effectively like this, a bit more sophisticated, but it's the same idea, and it applies this like jelly coat to darken and seal off the seam. Personally, I think it looks a bit naff. That's my personal view. Anyway, these have a very good use. I didn't think this would probably work at first, but I'll show you how you can dye inside the hole. And actually, it's a great shape and application because it's conical. You can sort of touch it around the top edge of your hole, and it will put the dye sort of around that top edge, and the dye will seep down the hole. So you do dye the whole hole, but what you avoid is a huge blob of dye. You'll get a bit of dye leakage on the black back, but not very much. So it's quite an effective way. Let's zoom in a bit closer and I'll show you it in practice. First thing I do is I put a bit of wax around the top edge of the holes, and that's really just as a safety precaution. If dye does splurge over, I want to be able to wipe it off, and the wax will seal the leather and stop it sort of staining the top surface. So all I'm going to use is some of jolly old Sedgwick's Leather Care. It's a nice thick sort of I suppose lardy type compound. That's probably not very fair. It's a very nice thing. Natural oils, fats and beeswax, and it is nice. So that's the Sedgwick Leather Care, but it's very effective for that because all those natural oils, fats and beeswax actually do a very good job. So I apply it quite thickly around the top of the holes so you can sort of see it on the surface. Don't know if you'll pick that up on camera because it's a bit subtle, but anyway, that's smudged some wax to sort of make any dye run off that. What I then do is take my little edging pen, and I have a little sort of spindly end here, and I just dip it in my dye. Now I dip it to load up the pen, not too much, so you just touch it on the edge of the container if you need to, and then just hover it around the hole. That's done. You'll get roughly one hole, sometimes two per dip. There, and number 3. I'll just do 3, give you an idea. There we are. I'll wipe that off properly in a minute. We're fine on top. A little bit of bleed through on the back, but not very much. But perfectly dyed holes. And it's a really controlled way of getting dye into, you know, sort of confined spaces. This is standard Phoebing's dye. And I'll show you close-ups in a second. I think you can probably see that there. It's applied it very successfully. I just find it's a very consistent way. And, you know, if you need to get into some other sort of awkward crevice or something, it's quite a good technique, just using one of these dye pencils. So I thought I'd share that with you. One other little tip, you'll notice I keep my dye container in like this nice pot, which actually my sister made. It's a very nice little piece of work. And the reason for that is it's so easy to knock one of these sort of pots over, and then you could have dye all over your workbench, and worse still, all over what you're making. I have had it happen. So now whenever dye is on my bench, it's in a pot. And that way I know it won't fall over.